welcome to Change Management. It was, I think, 10 or 15 years ago. Change was a big thing, a really big thing, in all the large companies and organizations. At that time, changing organizations was a long process. A long, drawn-out ordeal, to use that word. Left many managers and staff both shocked and scarred. Many companies at that time, consulting firms, made a lot of money out of it. McKinsey, Boston Consulting Group, and even Accenture may not have existed if it wasn't for change, or our fear of change. Today, change is an everyday occurrence. It's almost like changing your underwear. Have you changed your underwear today?
No.
Yeah. No? Yes, you have. Then you're familiar with change. It's an everyday occurrence. But in our place, if you talk about change today in large organizations and companies, we mean by everyday occurrence that we now are living in a global, digital, and sometimes brutal world. What does it mean? Digital, global, and brutal. Give you one example. I think it was the year 863 when the Chinese printed the first book. And it took us 600 years for Gutenberg to do the same here in Europe. So what happened in 1991? Well, then we launched the first website online. And now, 20 years later, how many websites do we have online in the world? Over 100 billion websites. So the rate of change has increased dramatically during the last 15 years. The global, digital, and brutal. And this calls out for a new, and this is what I think is really interesting and bothers me a lot. At the same time that the rate of change has increased so dramatically, management has not. We're still managing our organizations and companies at the same way that we did 50 years ago. And this calls out for a new approach to management in general, and certainly change management. I didn't present myself in the beginning, but you did. My name is Alexis Wiklin. I have worked with change management for almost 20 years right now, in different companies, in different branches. And I'm running my own agency at the moment called In Love Again. And that's easily on the assumption that you can reach astonishing results just by focusing on the human aspects of change management. So that's what I'm here to talk to you about. Okay, let's go back to traditional change management. Have you been a part of a change management within your organization or employer or so on? Sometimes. How often do they say that now we need to change? Once a year?
Every day.
Every day. No, they have to be flexible. But if we look at a traditional change management, what would a traditional manager do if he's facing a huge need for change needs in his or her organization? They'll bring in the expert. And the experts are the consultants. A whole bunch of them. Really nice suits. Some will say that they are overpaid. Do we have any consultants in here? I am. And the next thing they do, this is the first, you bring in an expert, because this is something that we can't handle for ourselves. Secondly, they lock themselves up with the consultants in the room. A war room. Because this change is nothing that you can hand out to your employees or middle management. This is far too hard to understand. So after a few days, maybe a couple of weeks, or in the worst case, a whole year, they come out with a solution, and then will present it to us. And the solution is often presented in this way. You recognize it, don't you? It's a method. It's a description of the process, how we work, in detail. Because the assumption here is that if we can describe exactly how we work in every detail, we are able to improve our way of work in order to be more cost-effective or deliver higher quality. But is it understandable? No. It takes several courses, classes, or even, I don't know, but you're educating it. You have to understand the process in order to improve your results when you work. This is the first one. The second one is to have a strategy launched for you. So they have already thought about the aim, the problem that you're supposed to solve, the vision and or overall objectives or the goals for the company, the strategy and activities, the action plan and the action log. And what are you supposed to do with this? Listen and do what they say. So you have a method and you have a strategy. And this is the traditional change management way of doing it. My interest is not actually on the very process or the strategy. It's much more to catch or see the underlying management approach to these methods and strategies. What is the management approach buried within these solutions? And I come up with an idea, a metaphor. Do you know who this guy is? Louder, I can't hear. Kasparov, yes, Garry Kasparov, former chess master, world champion. What is he thinking about? The next move. He's thinking about all the pieces on the board, the current positions, and evaluate the current position of his pieces on the board. This is the first thing. The first thing he's thinking about. And secondly?
Where he wants to come, or where he wants to end up.
Yeah, the long-term plans, the long-term scenarios. So even if, despite the move from his opponent, he always have another scenario, another move up in his sleeve. Can you see the similarities between traditional management and the chess master? They are both actually working based on their work. They play in the chess masters play is based on that you can predict the future in scenarios or prognosis, and evaluating the current position of the pieces on the board. When it comes to traditional management, this is the same thing. You know, Taylor, traditional management developed from the industrial era. And the industrial era have a very mechanical view on people and organizations. That people are parts of a machine, so which has to be monitored and controlled. Prognosis. Can you predict the future in a global, digital, and brutal world? I give you one example. Can you pronounce this one? Louder, please. Eyjafjall, I think it is Eyjafjallajökull, or something like that. I found a clip on the YouTube that I have to show you. It's only 30 seconds long, so here you have several variations of pronouncing the Eyjafjallajökull.
Underneath the Eyjafjallajökull glacier.
The eruption at the Eyjafjallajökull glacier.
The volcano underneath the Eyjafjallajökull glacier.
According to reports, the three eruptions of Eyjafjallajökull on record.
Eruption under the Eyjafjallajökull glacier.
Iceland's Eyjafjallajökull volcano were blackened.
I just had to show it to you. But if you look at the newsflash, I found this volcano on Iceland. And what's really interesting me when it comes to management approach is how come none of the trend spotters in the world that make a living out of predicting the future for companies, organizations, and politicians, how come none of them could predict that the small volcano on Iceland would shut down whole European airspace for almost a week, with all the consequences of that? So if the trend spotters who make a living of it can't predict the future, why should we have this as an underlying assumption when we develop management in our organizations and companies? That's the first question. The second question is about methods. The method I think is the world's most spread is something called lean management. Have you heard of it? It's almost like the picture with all the arrows and the squares that I showed you before. The description in detail how we do our work in our organizations or manufacturing processes. The role model for this lean management has always been, for the last 10 years, Toyota Industries. The Toyota car manufacturers and the Toyota Industries. They got to be the world's largest car manufacturers is something that has to, must have done something good. But just 2 months or 1 month ago, I saw this one in the newsflash. Have you heard it? Toyota announces a major callback of 8 million cars from the US market. Do you remember the problem with the cars?
Brakes.
There was actually 2 problems. The first one was the brakes, and the second one was the gear. There's no detail on a car, is it? How do you have detail? Yeah, the gear. Yeah. So you have the gear and the brakes, 2 major functions on a car. And this is the role model for working with high quality and cost cuts in our company and all the change management consultants in lean management. So what does it say? 2 examples. Could it be a coincidence? I don't think so. The future is very, very hard to predict. I think it's impossible to predict the future. And it's very hard to come up with a foolproof method in order to increase the quality and cut costs. So what can you do then? I'd like to launch a collaborative approach instead. I've come up with 3 concepts for you to focus on the human aspects of change management. And I want to present them for you like this. First, have a tempting prompt. You know what a prompt is? It's something to inspire you, something to encourage. Why? Because people like to understand. They like to understand the big picture, their role in the big picture, to be a part of something. Because that gives them meaning, that gives them motivation. And if you can have a tempting prompt, you're also able to maybe get change developed from fear to something like a driver. Fear is not longer the problem with change, because change has become a driver. You can do that by invest the same amount of money and time into the change process or the human resource department. Today, all the money is in the marketing department. I would also say that it's the human resource director has the same need today for a professional copywriter and art director as the marketing department. Secondly, work together, research and analysis. Why? Because people like to be involved. Also here, to be a part of something. And you can do that very, very easily as well. We spend millions and billions of crowns on surveys with survey company, asking our customers, what do you think about our company, or employees, what do you think about the organization, the management. You can work that out with your employees. Let the employees be a part of the surveys that you do to the market. Let the customers be a part of your product development. It's easier to work together, and it's something that everyone likes. And finally, display the results. Everyone would like to see their names in the lights. And I will show you something more personal. Because what you can see in this picture, if you look very close, is my mom and dad. And they were absolutely thrilled when they came back from New York and had visited Nasdaq stock market and had their picture shown at Times Square. And if you work with change management processes or change within your organizations, think about the art industry. If you are a musician and release a record, in the record cover, it used to be a thanks to Mom and everyone that helped me out to establish and finish this record. And I think we should think the same way about change management in organizations and in companies. So, I'm not sure if I have used my 10 minutes or 15 minutes and so on. This is all I have to say for now. And there is actually a reason that that the company's name is In Love Again. And you have to think of what that is. Thank you very much.